All right, we are recording chapter 5 of this, which is I guess you could say the action start for the Battle of Hoth. So, excuse me, basically from when snow speeders are taking off and you've got the rebel troops outside the base, first noticing the AT-ATs approaching, um, to Luke has fallen to the ground after, taking out the AT-AT, because by hand, where you use the harpoon gun to get up there, cut it open with the lightsaber, dropped a mine. It actually says. I didn't make that a note, but it's like there's stuff that does not make sense here. See, I'm sorry, but it really, really is feeling like some of this is not a how would this battle work when you have these two opposing forces with these resources and these weapons and such available to them. It's not like that. It's more of a how do we make a cool scene for a movie that people shouldn't think too much about? Let me adjust that down a little bit. There we go. Yeah. I'm not all that impressed. Although one thing that I do actually like, why did they use the tow cables? I mean, obviously we know from watching the movie it was the solution to deal with the AT-ATs. But why? Where did the idea come from? It actually in the book says that it was Luke seeing that they couldn't shoot the the AT-ATs down. They were too heavily armored. Started thinking, what would a farm boy do against a wild beast like this? And apparently figured they'd use something to tie up its legs. So it's like, hey, grab your harpoon and tow cable. Now I don't like how this is done, but I do like this idea. I do like this thinking here, where it's basically the whole stop and think outside the box. Now I actually have multiple reasons for why I don't necessarily like how this is presented here. For one thing, Luke is the only one with a brain, apparently. No one else is like, yeah, the head is too heavily armored. Let's try aiming for the legs. Aim for the joints, specifically. No, nothing like that. Nothing like it's not like they're well, because I'm just thinking, since we have the image here, even of the AT-AT, because I mean, it's not unreasonable. Aim for the joints, because they have to be able to turn. They are potentially also powered, but they're going to bear a lot of weight. So target there instead of at the head. Obviously, the head is going to be very well armored, because people are in there. It also seemed like in this something along the bottom, at least in the movies, that like it's holding something. I get shoot there. It's like nothing like that at all. It is just Luke thinking. It's like, let's use the harpoon guns and cable to tie up the legs. Wedge, do you have any ideas? Nothing like that. Nope, just that straight to Luke. And it's one of those. How do you demonstrate a character is more intelligent than others? By making sure they have the solution to the problem. But one issue here, and this is the thing I'm getting at, is they're kind of presenting that, but they're not allowing any other. They're not suggesting any other solution. Like this chapter. Let me actually see how long this is. It didn't seem that long. The previous chapter was much shorter. Okay, no, it is about 10 pages. You could probably stretch it to 15 easily. And I shouldn't even say stretch. You could fill it out to 15 just by having them do things like having to consider how to do that. You could also do some other things like explaining why they even have harpoon guns on these things. Because I do, if you've been watching these, you know I will reference my own stories. In a letter from Catherine, I do have, actually multiple times, the idea of I have a problem. What resources do I have for solving this? And the main character thinks through them. It's like, I have this, I have this, I have this. What can I do with that? And there was one time when it's like he is rushing to go forward to help, and he's like, I have no plan. How long before I get there? 15 minutes. Okay, I have to figure it out in this amount of time. And I actually am putting in there, like, okay, I'm thinking about this. I have this resource. Would that help me? No, it wouldn't. And then it's like 10 minutes left. And it's like doing that because that is what you should be doing. And that's quite long. This is not right there. Anyhow, come back to the whole, why do the speeders have harpoon guns? I mean, like, legitimately, why is this a thing? are you expecting with these snow speeders that you're going to shoot it at? Because they're not. This is another thing. The harpoon guns are wildly inconsistent also. Because when it is first used by Wedge, because Dak on Luke's speeder is killed before Luke can try this himself. Wedge tries it first, which is another thing. Is that it's like, it's great having Wedge back. There's supposed to be other pilots than Luke and Wedge, aren't there? But anyhow. So Wedge does it. It describes the harpoon piercing the leg. Piercing. So it sounds like it's an actual harpoon with a tip. Right? But then later, it says that Luke grabs the harpoon gun after, in this scene. Like he's reaching in there, and one thing that he's grabbing is the harpoon gun. He also grabs a mine. Why they have a mine on the inside of a snowspeeder, I don't know. Okay, I'm just like, actually, no, legitimately, why would you ever have that there? I was like, that is a very specific. Why would you be carrying an explosive in there like that unless you expect to use it? Which you're expecting you're going to be flying around. You're not stopping. You're not landing. You're not like tossing the thing out the window. You're not doing that in this situation. There'd be no reason to have that mine there unless it's standard equipment. Why? Why is the harpoon gun standard equipment? But anyway, he grabs it. And that's what he uses. But now it's magnetic. That it clings to the underside of the AT-AT to pick him up. That's a radical... A magnet isn't just going to pierce through. A magnet might actually just shatter. So it's like completely different harpoon gun here. There's also the problem of... You got a harpoon gun, right? That this thing apparently has enough force it can pierce through armored metal. Because, actually, yeah, right there. It has to be able to pierce through heavily armored metal. If that weren't armored, would it pierce through? That means that they could just be shooting at the legs and they topple over. That's easy. No need for the harpoon gun, right? You're getting a rant. Hope you like it. So it has to be very powerful, which means it is very likely designed to be fired from a speeder, which let's just say that's 1 ton. Okay, let's just say that snow speeder there is 1 ton. Luke, at best, based on how, the size of Mark Hamill at the time, when you're thinking about the movie, at the very best is 1/10 that weight. No laws of physics. If the snowspeeder is barely moved by firing that, Luke would be launched. He's not, because apparently either it is completely variable, which is not described, or they're just not realizing that, oh wait, yeah, this can't actually work that way. There's also, why is there any belief that it isn't a very large and powerful harpoon gun? Such that he's not picking it up, he's not carrying that. It's... I guess a way to think of it, what I'm seeing here, is imagine like a Jeep or a Humvee in a war movie, where they have a .50 caliber machine gun in it. That thing is mounted to the vehicle, and you are not picking that up. Not easy. I mean, you would have to be a very large and strong person to pick that up. And you know how you pick that up? You're picking it up like this. You're not picking it up in a way you're like this and can fire it. Okay, that's not what's happening. Those things are huge. All right. So they're not light machine guns. Okay, let me put that, because light machine gun is reasonable. Some of those that you could carry them. Those are much heavier than that. You're not picking up, and you're certainly not firing it while you're carrying it. Why is the snowspeeder not going to have something the equivalent there, where it is very large? It might be bolted down such that you're not removing it, not a arbitrary, oh, I just crashed, let me grab it. No, you're not doing any of that. There's also, how's it being fired? Because why would it have physical buttons on there to fire it? It would make more sense that it's electronic, that you send an electronic signal. And part of the reason why this would make more sense is because you're on Hoth. It's very cold. You don't want an open window so you can hit the buttons. So it would have to be an electronic signal. So what is he doing? Is he pulling that and then pulling out the wires? I mean, none of this makes sense. I get it's cinematic. But you gotta do it better. Come on. And it's again the whole, it pierced the metal, right? This isn't like a hook and winch that you have on your truck. Okay? This thing is meant to go and yank Okay? You're doing damage to whatever you're hitting there. So, what are you gonna be shooting this harpoon at? You're not shooting it at something because, like, oh, I need to help move this piece of equipment. Oh, no, I just destroyed it by trying to move this piece of equipment. No, that's not what's going on here. The harpoon is going to destroy what it hits unless it's very big, which is the case with the AT-ATs. So, I hate this. It's just so frustrating because it seems like it's just, here's an arbitrary solution that is not well thought out and therefore also becomes inconsistent. We were changing a harpoon that can pierce to one that's magnetic. Something that can fire with enough power to pierce to something that now a human can fire and carry. And we don't know why they're there. We don't know why they have these on there. Because I don't see there being any function that serves. That is what so annoys me here. So I'm just... That's basically all I have. Even though it was like 10 pages long, there really wasn't that much that happened. As far as something to comment on. Oh, yeah, that's right. There's also that. Why are there no TIE fighters? For how this is described, they aren't even ground troops with the AT-ATs. They're just the AT-ATs there, which in one way makes sense because they are very large, very powerful, but you would have ground troops around them as well. Like this is something I remember seeing a while ago, talking about proper tactics involving tanks, because an AT-AT is somewhat akin to a tank. Some people will react when, like, if they are troops walking alongside a tank. If the tank comes under fire, their reaction can be to like run to the tank because it's armored. It will give them protection. It's like, well, no, actually, you want to spread out. You're more mobile, and anti-tank weapons are different from anti-personnel weapons. And is also, if they have an anti-tank weapon and it goes boom, you're gonna go boom too if you're standing next to it. So you would. It makes sense that you would have ground troops around there as well, who could be advancing as well, who are laying down more fires, so potentially are attacking the rebels as well, so it is just more firepower. Might be able to shoot and harass the speeders. So that all makes perfect sense that they would be there. And then also, why is there no air cover for them? Like, where are the TIE fighters? I mean, it states there are 12 snow speeders in the air. 12. A dozen. There are 6 freaking Star Destroyers in orbit. They could probably put down 12... Well, actually, I don't know. But because I'm exaggerating and ranting here, 1,200 TIE fighters. They might be able to say, yeah, put them all down. That would be 200 each. Okay, that might be too many. I could believe a Star Destroyer having 100, though. I could. Because even... You would have to pack them in there, but remember, Star Destroyer is pure military. This is not... At least it's never depicted as being a ship for exploration. It's depicted as a ship of war. So why wouldn't you have everything there being for housing troops for ground invasion, for housing fighters and pilots, and for housing weapons, empowering those weapons. So that for actual like actual naval gun type weapons. So that wouldn't be unreasonable to me. So you could have potentially an order of magnitude more fighters in the air going at the snow speeders and providing cover. I mean, that is not unreasonable here. In fact, it makes a lot of sense because the AT-ATs are very large, so it's reasonable that they have armor, but they can also be a more powerful weapons platform, more powerful generator, more powerful weapons. So they might be what you need to destroy the shield generator, something to pierce through the shields, although why wouldn't you be able to get the... I guess that is something that also needs to be explained. I guess it might just be that proximity matters for being able to shoot through the shield, because why can't the capital ship with its naval guns, which should have nothing that comes near it, at least in terms of an AT-AT, the guns on the Star Destroyer should be able to one-shot an AT-AT, I would think. So why is an AT-AT able to pierce the shield, unless it is something like the shield is set up so you can walk through? which Phantom Menace, as I recall, they do the Gungan shield. It is blocking all the heavy fire, but the ground troop droids are are able to walk through that. So maybe it's something that's what we should assume is also going on here. So that's why the AT-ATs can get in there. Because they are slow enough and armored enough, they might just be able to pierce through. Even if there is a force against them, the armor would be able to withstand that, get in, and then destroy the generators. That's fine, but it still is why wouldn't you have cover around them? Why are you just relying on, they're very heavily armored, so we're good? I mean, it's very, very poorly constructed. I'm sorry. I mean, it is. It's like, I don't have a military background. I did take military history when I was in high school. I don't want to talk about how long ago that was. Although I will add this. I don't remember exactly what it was, but the first thing that I actually used the internet to do research on for a school project, is a piece of homework, was actually in my military history class. That is how long ago it was. That is how old I am. That I can remember in high school, the first time I used the internet for actual research as opposed to going to a book. Yeah. You should be envious of me. If you were younger and you just always had the internet, it's like the books are in many ways better. Coherent, this isn't, but it's fiction. But you have the coherence of it, and in some cases, there were teams of people that worked on that versus some single random person that wrote an article that somebody else may or may not have looked at to edit. So, yeah. Yeah, it's a very, and for anyone that's like, but it's too cold for these things to operate on Hoth. It's like, space is colder. I mean, true, you don't have atmosphere there that, may help disrupt things, may help pull the heat away. I'll grant that, but it still is, the cold should be something you can handle. You had to land the ships on Hoth for the rebels. There had to be landing craft for the AT-ATs to get onto Hoth. And the rebels are getting transports and fighters from the ground up. Clearly you can operate in this atmosphere. And if it is if they are TIE fighters, I'm sorry, I would still be like, even if say we have 10 minutes of operability before it's like their engines will seize up or whatever from the cold. It's like, okay, pilots, here's what you do. You go down for 8 minutes. You then come up, right? If you are stuck down there for 8 minutes, you land, you're now a ground troop. That's how it's working, okay? Because we are 6 freaking Star Destroyers. These are capital ships. These things are powerful. What the hell's the Rebel Alliance got? They're transports. They're small, like, one-man fighters. They have the Millennium Falcon that isn't a weapons platform. It's a freighter. There we go. I was thinking frigate, and that's not right. It's a, freighter. They have a shield and an ion cannon. That's it. They don't have that much. Okay? We can overwhelm them with ease. We're doing it. Okay? We are doing that. Because now I'm just thinking, how would I write it then to address that? So it's like you have these swarms coming in. I think what I would be tempted to do is have somebody talk about, you have to be able to modulate the size of the shield, right? And this is one of those, this is actual science, more so science fiction than this is more so science fantasy. But it's like, you have to be able to modulate the size of the shield, right? It has to be a function of this. Because if nothing else, the amount of power you pour into the shields should control that. So you could start with it actually small, very compact, which should help save on power. But the Empire will pick that up and might be flying nearby and also like bringing and it's like, okay, that's where I have to get the AT-ATs to then cross and all that. Well, what I would be tempted to do then is like, okay, as they fly some of the TIE fighters nearby, extend the shields very rapidly. Because the TIE fighters probably hitting the field would explode, would be destroyed. So use it offensively, where you're just going like that and just swatting at them. You could do that. And now you have provided a reason for the TIE fighters to be there because it makes sense, but also that they're not just going to completely tip the battle in favor of the Empire. Okay? Because, I mean, you want battles to be kind of sort of even though, yes, the rebels are losing, but you still want it to be reasonable. You want it close enough that it is reasonable for them to survive, for them to escape this, that they can buy enough time to escape. Apply the shield like that. So now you knock that out. So now they're going to keep further back. The AT-ATs will push up forward. It also means then that the AT-ATs have to be concerned about when they're going to lose their air cover. Okay, so you might be able to set up this zone then between where you normally have the shield and where you can extend it out to, where there will be no TIE fighters, so there's no air cover for the AT-ATs, but the AT-ATs have to cross. So that can be the main area that the snow speeders are able to operate in because they don't have to worry about the TIE fighters then. So you could do some stuff there, and we also how is it that the snow speeders are able to cross through? Because it's also, why don't you have? And actually, I mean, legitimately, you could have the capital ships up above raining fire down, not necessarily to hit and destroy the snow speeders, but that is possible, but to just throw up so much debris into the air that they can't see anything. Because the AT-ATs know where they're going and they're armored, so they can be like, what do we care? If it runs into us, it's fine. And it's all-terrain armored transport. So it's like, yeah, you're destroying the terrain. That's fine. We're still walking through. It's like, there are ways you can use all these different resources and have it make sense. It just starts to become a problem of, okay, how are the rebels going to make it out of this at all? And it's, different things like that as well, that it's just like, what is going on here? And there was another point that occurred to me. Oh, yeah, that's right. Snow speeders, right? I mean, if you look at this, and it does describe that its guns are like the horns on some prehistoric beast, which that also reminds me of something else I want to mention. I think it was on the first page of it. Troopers, rebel, hurry to carry out their commands, running through the snow with heavy bazooka-like weapons on their shoulders. That kind of bothered me. Because that's that part of me that's like, okay, I know what a bazooka is. Do they? I mean, it's just the whole... I get that the reader is probably going to know what a bazooka is, just because it's a fun word, so everyone knows what that is and understands it is a weapon, if not necessarily the design. And there's various movies and such and television that you would have learned what it is. That's all fine, but does it exist in the Star Wars galaxy? I don't know. And there's just that part of me that's like, I'd be like, let's explain it. Let's actually describe it. Instead of, so that you're immersed in the world as opposed to making references to the real world. Okay? It's just one of those things. But anyway, the guns are at the front. So the snow speeders, once they realize they can't attack successfully, like they can't just shoot the thing, should be like, okay, we're going to hang out behind it then. So, sorry, over here. And it's like, okay, use the tow cables. All right, we come in this way and do that and try to keep tight so that they can't aim. Now, yes, there are going to be, there's multiple of the AT-ATs that are spread out. One's in the front, some are in the back. And it actually says that the general's in the one in front. It's like, I don't think so. I mean, not that leading from behind is actually a good idea, but a general runs the whole operation, right? I mean, here, the movie Patton, which is a good movie, I enjoy it. Patton, when conducting, he ambushes one of Rommel's units. I don't remember what size it was, but unfortunately Rommel wasn't there. But Patton is off to the side. He's observing from a distance because that's actually what he would be doing. That is what the general would be doing. They don't directly engage in the fight like that because it's like you need to be able to change up the orders. Because it's like, okay, send them in now, pull that group back. That's what a general does here. So Veers being in the front one is like, what are you doing? You have no knowledge now of what's going on behind you. I mean, if anything, he should be in one of the shuttles that dropped it off, watching from a distance. That just have that hovering in the air or something, and just monitoring and issuing commands. There's also, I don't remember what movie it is. I'm trying to trying to remember actors' names. All I can think of is Sergeant York, because that's the actor. I can't think of it. Hang on. Let me just look it up. And Walter Brennan. I'm actually looking at Meet John Doe, which is a very good movie. But Gary Cooper, that's it. I'm pretty sure it's Gary Cooper. It might have been John Wayne, but I'm pretty sure it was Gary Cooper. But also Walter. Oh wait, no. No, was it them? I know it was Walter Brennan at least, so I actually. Well, no, I shouldn't spend the time trying to figure that out. But Walter Brennan, at minimum, it's a movie talking about. It's actually neat because it goes from black and white to color at one point. It is talking about the efforts that were made with basically the Navy Air Corps and the idea of an aircraft carrier, even because it talks about how, like, we did actually, as I recall, and I might be misremembering, we did have aircraft carriers in World War One, but they were like first generation. We didn't really know fully how things were working, fully how things were going, and it's also that was still the era of biplanes and such, so they weren't great. But we did actually have like one or two, maybe three, and when World War II came about, for one thing, a lot of there was sentiment that no one ever wants World War One to happen again, so it's never going to happen again. So we don't even need any of these. But they were like constantly, no, no, no. Not only should we have them, we need to make sure that people being trained for doing this, because the way it was presenting this is air power is going to define future wars, and it does. I wish I could remember the name of it, but there was one battle in World War II that in the Pacific that changed warfare, essentially, especially naval warfare, because it was the first time you had two, true, they were navies, technically, not armies, facing each other, where they never actually saw each other. For the entire battle, the ships never saw each other. But it was critical in the war because it was the first time, it was one of the greatest victories we had, that the Allies had, that America had against the Japanese. And prior to that, the Japanese were running the Pacific very effectively. But the two fleets never saw each other. It was just the aircraft carriers sending their aircraft out. The Japanese fleet, as I recall, was completely destroyed, and it was only like dozens. That was it, just dozens out of hundreds of planes, of American planes that were lost. A huge imbalance there. But anyway, Walter Brennan is, I think maybe they're both admirals at this point, but Walter Brennan is definitely an admiral in this at this point. And it may have actually been that battle. It may have been a different battle, but they are having to sit in an aircraft carrier's communications room, and they're literally sitting there and just being like, listening to it and doing nothing. And Walter Brennan is sitting there somewhat calmly, at least in appearance. He's not. While Gary Cooper's character is fidgety. And Walter Brennan is just trying to explain to him, this is how it goes. This is one of the things that sucks about being an admiral. We come up with the plans, they're the ones that are actually executing it. It's like, also the notion of a flagship, which is one reason why Star Trek gets annoying with saying the Enterprise is a flagship. The Admiral carries a flag. It's the Admiral's flag that's on a ship. And I'm hoping I'm remembering all this correctly. It's been a while since I looked through some of this, but it's also the Admiral's issuing orders. The captain of the, for the entire fleet, the captain of the ship controls the ship. The Admiral doesn't. The Admiral, can tell the captain can do things, but it's the captain's ship. A general would be like this. Well, Veers would have had the plan, given it to his officers, the lower ranking people, whether it's likely colonels and colonels, majors, captains, who would actually be piloting the AT-ATs. He wouldn't be on one, or he would be on one in the back. But more likely, he would be in the shuttle and just watching. That's what you see in Patton. That's what you see in that other movie that I wish I could remember what it was called. And I'm doing this terrible thing of I'm actually looking. Okay, it shouldn't be there. I am certain I'm in like World War II era. This would have been after it by a little bit at least. No, that wouldn't be it. Well, no, because he should have been an admiral. feel like that's getting too late. But in any case, it there's a lot of good films from that era. Um, yeah, that's not. And I do remember it's Gary Cooper. I might have wrong, but I am quite confident that it is Walter Brennan. But maybe I am wrong there. Anyway, um, but I did mention the whole black and white and color thing. So it is basically once pre World War II, it's in black and white. After once the World War II starts, then it becomes color, just to show the change in technology as well. Also, their roles change. But anyway, it is not. This battle is not well described, and it's one of those things where some of this, the harpoon gun stuff, I feel anyone could figure out is like, wait, this doesn't make sense. Views being there, I feel that might be fewer people that would recognize. Be like, wait, he shouldn't be there. He should be off a ways. But I mean, it is patent because it is semi. It is a biopic. There's an element of it that is a documentary. Well, elements of it that are like a documentary. He doesn't get into the battles. He observes them from a distance or comes in later and figures out what happened. And he also prepares battle plans. That's what generals do. They don't go in like that. It's also going back to Star Trek. Admiral Kirk was a bad idea because he's a ship captain. That's where his skills actually are. Him being an admiral means that he's basically an administrator as well. That's not what we've seen he's good at. He should be in charge of a fleet, or he would be teaching, something like that. But that's not what we really see. So it's. I don't think that they get a lot of that stuff right in Star Trek. I love Star Trek, but it does have those problems. But its general views would be in the back, observing, making changes, and doing something like, oh, we're seeing that they have figured out they can knock them down via tow cables. Report that back to the ships. We can't let that happen in the future. And send down TIE fighters immediately. We need them to come down here and make sure these snow spears are destroyed. We cannot let that happen. And that's what Veers would be doing. He wouldn't be like going forward in it. It almost makes me wish that the book I was writing right now would actually let me do some of this stuff. Would actually let me implement some of this. But it's not the case. I do have three story ideas where it could come into play that have wars in them, wars that also do include some amount of technology. But yeah, it's. Let me just check who wrote this. Because I don't want to be by Donald F. Glut. I'm not sure. Glut? Not sure. But either way, I'm not trying to be mean or trying to be insulting or anything like that. I'm trying to be critical. That I'm trying to do. And it's just. It's a lot to be critical of, I feel. And it's disappointing because. I mean, this is part of. Well, the movies are part of my childhood and part of a lot of people's childhood. And it's like this is something that is generational, does get passed down, and it's just seeing this, and it's like there's so many weaknesses, and it's just if I'm ever so fortunate to pass it down myself, what am I gonna do? It's like, am I also gonna be like, now listen, Billy, or listen Tommy, or listen Annie, or listen Sorry, I'm just blanking on more names. Hannah, there we go. Let's do that one. I just started thinking Seven Brides for Seven Brothers. That works. Seven Brides for Seven Brothers is another good movie. And by the way, for anyone wondering, it was a movie before it was a musical. Musical play. It was a movie first. Anyhow, some people get that wrong. It's like, yes, you enjoy the movie. Now, let me explain to you why it doesn't actually make sense. Here are these problems again. They might be like, what? I don't I like the movie. Isn't that enough? Maybe not. No, you have to be critical of it as well. Anyway, has been enough of me. I know I've been ranting a lot, but I mean, it's just there really is. Even A New Hope had fewer issues, I think, than this, and that had issues. That certainly did have issues, but this, I guess, it's just technical stuff matters to me. Because to me, that's also part of where the fun and interest with stories, and especially science fiction, can come from is being technical, where there are rules and you're having to follow these rules and making sure that the rules make sense and that they are properly conveyed to the reader. So things like referencing a bazooka, a Earth weapon in a non-Earth reality, that's a problem. That's a rule broken. Having harpoon guns that vary in size, vary in power at least, and use, why are they, so many different problems. And in theory, you might be like, okay, no, it was Luke telling Dak and everyone, hey, you have your harpoon guns in your personal equipment for whatever reason. Pull those out and start shooting. Okay, how's it being mounted to the snowspeeder then when you're going around? Damn. That's a whole nother thing, the cable. The cable length. The mass of that cable would be so heavy. There's no way Luke could carry it if he's carrying what was on the snowspeeder. So it needs to be mounted to the snowspeeder such that it is a snowspeeder holding the cable that's being fired out. And to help put this in context, one thing that I learned so many years ago, a ship's anchor, that's heavy, right? We all know ships' anchors are heavy. It's half the weight, though. The anchor is just basically hooks. It's very heavy, but it's hooks. The chain connecting it is the other half of the weight, and the weight is what really is truly what you need to help stop the ship, because you need to counter the mass of the ship itself. So more mass there. And it's like the cable would be immensely heavy. So it would be heavier than the gun, heavier than the harpoon. Because I'm imagining that it would be comparable in concept, at least, to an anchor chain, in that it would have to have a lot of mass to it, and it's the whole thing. Because an anchor chain and then a rope, and the rope is lighter because you just need that mass. But it's like, man, yeah, it is. The harpoon guns make no sense. They're completely inconsistent. It's gonna be interesting when I watch this movie after finishing the story, because it's gonna be like, I don't know how long I'm gonna be able to look at this again, because it might be like, this is all bullshit. None of this is right. Oh man. But it's cinematic, and that's what people wanted. That's what people enjoy. Um. See you next time.